Here we have an apple covered in dripping paint, so we are going to replicate that using acrylic paints. I start off with sap green and Payne's grey, and I work in the cast shadow. This shadow is mostly subtle, so you will see that I lay down the paint and then I'll use a dry clean brush to lift most of that paint up again. And I'll do that until I'm happy with the shape of the shadow. For the apple, I use permanent green light, sap green and cadmium yellow light to form a basic shading. The light is on the right hand side, so the apple appears lighter towards the right. As you can see, I'm not trying to get any detail into the apple. I'm rather just concentrating on getting the basic shape or rounding correct. As the table is white and the apple peel is reflective, the white of the table will reflect inside the peel. So to do that, I use titanium white and a technique called dry brushing to add this reflection. We're going to chat more about dry brushing shortly. In order to complete the apple, I'll add the shadow cast by the dripping paint. Notice how that makes the dripping paint look 3D, and we haven't even started painting it yet. And that just shows you how important shadows are in your paintings. The dripping paint is a lot more complex than the apple, so we'll spend a bit more time painting that. I'll start by mixing 3 reds. The midtone is cadmium red neat out the tube. Highlight is cadmium red plus orange, and the shadow is cadmium red plus alizarin crimson. Then I block these tonal values in where I see them, and I shade them into each other. And as I do this, I'm ignoring those reflections in the paint, as well as the little details I see in the paint. I just want to get the overall shape of the dripping paint correct at this stage. As a result, you will see that I leave the central area empty initially, as it's even brighter and mostly covered by a reflection. To block in that area, I add even more orange to the highlight color and use that to block in the reflection area. With the basic shape of the paint established, you can dry the painting using a hairdryer. That will then allow us to use the dry brushing technique again to work in the reflections. Dry brushing is when you use a dry brush and tiny amounts of paint on your brush to paint super thin, transparent layers of paint over existing dry paint. Dry brushing works great for adjusting areas of color on your canvas as well as for reflections. By adjusting the amount of paint on your brush, you can show brighter or more subtle reflections without having to wash your brush. There's no secret sauce for knowing where to add the reflections. All it takes is careful observation to know where to add them and how much paint to use on the brush. Practice makes perfect. I always start with the brightest and the most obvious reflections, and then I'll gradually look for lighter and more subtle ones. Once I'm happy with them, I'll add the bubble detail onto the paint. The bubbles are simply a highlight on the right, a shadow on the left, and nothing in the center. Lastly, I add the stem using cadmium yellow and raw umber, as well as a few loose paint drops for interest. If you enjoyed this class, please leave a comment below and subscribe so we can inform you when we release new tutorials.